My name is Don Phillips, and I live in Los Angeles, California. And I have worked with government-sponsored agencies, but I also went to work for Lockheed Aircraft Corporation. My studies had to do with the design, engineering, mechanical, electrical, and aeronautics. I was a pilot, and at the time, 1961, 62, I started my new job in what is called the Skunk Works. Our projects were, of course, a contract special aircraft, flying aircraft, for the government, the United States government, and other agencies of the government, of course, supplied pilots. And I say this because it's important to the defense of the United States and the free world. Free world means those that believe in the opportunities for all humankind. The projects that I worked on were ongoing, and when I left the employment of the Skunk Works to go into the military, I felt that this is something I wanted to come back to after serving my country. Las Vegas, or near Las Vegas, Nevada, were very much in close proximity to our areas where we tested our aircraft, and a lot of commonly known as Area 51. We call it the Dreamland, the hog farm, the lake. You know, this place would flood once in a while, and it was really unusable. We're testing airplanes, and everybody knows that it tested special aircraft, such as the Blackbird, which I'm very proud of because that's my baby. When I was working with the Skunk Works, we signed an agreement with the National Security Agency and the National Security Council, as well as the CIA. And we kept very quiet about things because they always knew where we were and what we were doing. And I automatically had that team spirit, and we were a big family there, and I was very proud of that, having worked directly for Kelly Johnson. We worked with the Central Intelligence Agency as contractors. That was during the time of the Skunk Works. You see, the CIA was one of our best customers. And it's the CIA that has one of the world's best air forces. It's not... We have Francis Gary Powers, yeah, we knew him. Schumacher, a lot of these people. They're very real people, and they were often moved around by politics. You understand that the SR-71, we took some great risks. Do you think that some of the technology that you incorporated into that aircraft came from outside sources, outside the planet Earth? And I says, it's very possible. But I says, you have to remember, we came up with some, we still have to make it work here on planet Earth. So the propulsion systems, yes, there were new ones being developed. From what I learned over a period of years, anti-gravitational, actually using the force that is generated naturally by the planet Earth, is to repel off of it. There was research going on with that. We know, we can safely say that yes, there were some captured craft from 1945 or 47, was it? In Roswell, New Mexico, and yeah, they were real. And yes, we really did get some technology from them. And yes, we really did put it to work. And we can thank people in the United States Army to have the foresight to put these into industry for the benefit of the people of the world. I know this to be a fact. We put it to use, but it took us a long time to figure out what it was, and then figure out how we can use it, and then what to use it for. And are those products useful for humanity? I didn't see the craft, nor did I see the bodies, but I certainly know some of the people that did. And of course they're passed on now from their earthly bodies, but there was no question that there are people or beings from outside the planet that have lived here for a long time. And it isn't just something new that's been happening in the last couple of years. There's been NATO research conducted, joint research, joint meaning many different countries, And this it's been documented as to who those races are and their population at that time. And this was back in the early 60s. This is when I know that some of the technologies that came out of the Roswell incident, the technologies meaning that which came with the extraterrestrial craft. It took a while to figure out how they worked before we knew what to make from it, and then how to get it into industry. How can it benefit the people? And maybe they had color-coded what we would call fiber optics today that could bend light and that could guide light to one data location to another data location. Well, guess what? We've been talking about it for 6 years. We have that type of technology now. The guidance mechanism were nothing. There was no yoke, there was no wheel, there was a console, very colorful, and they used their hands. And by the thought process and by the way they moved their hands in rhythm with their thoughts was the guidance for the aircraft. But we also have, where I live, my neighborhood, I find out that we have prominent research people that are working on what we called in the Foxbat, the movie Foxbat, where they had the helmet that says, oh, you think in this language and you think this and you guide it with your eyes that way and you fire it with your thought process and fire your armament from the aircraft. That's very real. It wasn't perfected to the point that the movie made it perfected, but my gosh, since that time I think they have come pretty close. I'd like to add too that I feel that I'm not positive, but I think some of this technology came from crafts of other crashes. Okay, not just, there's a lot made of Roswell.
My first memory of experiences with extraterrestrials was in 1976 in Jacksonville, Florida. I was 4 years old. I was asleep in my bed, and then suddenly I was in a craft. I wasn't afraid. I was completely awake, and there were small children, other children of various ages. They looked pretty human, but their skin wasn't quite right. They had more of a flat ash kind of tint to their skin, and they had absolutely no body hair that was visible, and their eyes were a little larger, and their mouths were a little smaller. So there were just slight differences where they wouldn't quite be able to pass for human. And that's what I'm going to classify them as adult beings that were in the same room that I was in. They told me that these were my brothers and sisters, that they had been attempting to make a biotechnology that was compatible with putting this consciousness in a body and having it pass for human and integrate into human society. The children that were there were all extremely happy to see me, and they were like pinching my skin, feeling my skin and pulling at my clothes and kind of tickling me, not really meaning to, and touching my hair, and it was a beautiful experience.
Yeah, very surreal. Were they the same age, you think, or?
No, they were various ages, various heights. Some of them were, taller than, maybe they were more like middle elementary school age, just a little taller than the other children. And at home, what was happening was there was a large craft that was over my house, and everybody in the neighborhood was outside. Most of them had congregated in our driveway. My mother and the other people who were living in the home were all outside looking up into this craft for goodness knows how long. We're not really sure. Not really sure how it ended, how the experience ended, which is interesting. But I do remember once I was put back into the house, I was just back in my room. So I ran down the hallway and I jumped on the back of the couch and I looked outside, and I was looking over the bushes right outside the window, and there was everybody in the neighborhood standing in my driveway, including my mom, and they're all looking up and they're all bathed in these lights that I can't see it at that point, but it was like turning, you know, and so it was changing the lights that were coming down.
And that incident made it to the records, right?
It did. Well, let me rephrase that. What made it to the record was that someone reported to New Fork that they had seen in 1976 a craft matching the exact same description in an area of town that I lived in the time of year that this happened, which was summer.
So the first time you told me that story, I instantly thought, oh my God, she went to the Gray School for Gifted Kids. So when the Grays came to that conclusion that the first attempts to make contact with governments and people on this planet was not as successful as they thought it should be, they started their own, you know, hybrid program in order to make a comfortable contact with people on this planet. And what they also did is installing a kind of school where all these hybrid babies actually get educated. They also get chipped, which sounds awful, but it's actually an implant that helps monitoring the health status and blood rates, nutritional level, and also where they are on the planet. They get educated on different scientific, spiritual, and social topics as well. What we know is that these hybrid babies get, this is not a one-time only experience, but it happens many times and it goes over probably in most cases over some years even in order to educate those children.
Well, I do have another time that I have missing time as a child. 11 years old, sitting at the table very early in the morning, having about to have breakfast. And I look out my window. It's still dark outside, and there is an owl that's sitting on the branch of the tree that was growing right outside of our house. And there was something about this owl that was so captivating, I couldn't stop staring at it. Eventually, that owl's face slowly changed into what we would now consider a traditional gray.
Right.
And then after that, the next thing I knew, it was a couple of hours later, and I'm sitting at the table. It's daylight, my cereal's uneaten, and I've missed the bus.
But it also indicates that you might be closer related to the Grays than mostly other people.
Draw a small gray.
Small gray.
Are these the aliens that you've seen?
That is not gray.
No, but
Which ones did you see?
he's right here. The small gray. They have a little
had a
mouth.
How do they breathe?
They have nostrils, but they don't.
Do they breathe oxygen?
Yes, they can breathe oxygen. The atmosphere on their planet is very similar, but it's a binary star system, so they have like two suns, which makes the air a lot drier. Their skin is their bones are more fragile than ours. But they kind of.
So I can fucking. What's their body look like?
Their bodies, well.
They wear clothes. What do they do? How do they
on their home planet? I don't know. Now, see, they didn't. I'm reading that exchange program that Steven Spielberg explained at the end of Close Encounters of the Third Kind was really close to
Draw a female up there because I want to see if I fuck it.
Well, I don't know. They look the same.
When the special sport comes down to
How do you tell a male from a female?
your point.
They got fun bags.
No, actually, EBE1 is a female. The one, was a female. She actually
Draw the
died.
other one. This is the gray.
Who?
Draw all three of them.
And then there's another one, which is actually a clone. These things created a clone, which looks something similar, but it
And
has
these
a
are
large
bad dudes?
pointy
They
nose.
cloned?
They have large, pointy noses, but they pretty much.
You said they live among us, huh?
There was another incident called the Goodworth, and these right here are the tall whites, and they're actually a clone created by the small grays.
Are they
They're like servants.
What's the angry ones look like? The reptile ones that you were talking about. Fucking bad. The ones that we're gonna be fighting.
Yeah, they have small eyes.
Yeah, we actually saw those in Battle LA.
Small eyes
In their
and
They cut open their stomachs and found
They got
out that
weapons?
didn't have a-
weapons.
They're kind of like an onion. They have weapons.
They have layers.
But it's okay. She's a veterinarian. Are they evil?
The alien ones
Or not?
They look like reptiles.
This is a very bad drawing, but
It's pretty good to me.
How tall are those motherfuckers right there?
these guys right here,
Yeah.
and they're all humanoids. So they both walk on 2 legs. They all walk on 2 legs.
Well, I don't want to fuck that thing.
And this thing right here is huge. They're actually they're taller than us. They stand about 6 foot something on an average to 7 foot.
Are they are they like 230? Or are they like
Huge. I don't know, but
They're gonna fuck me
the
up.
one image that I
Maniacs.
have seen of them, they're huge. They have a very strong build.
But their bones are fragile.
No, not those.
This is going
The
on
small-
America's
the
Funniest
small.
Home Videos.
Well, what's up with the fucking big dudes? Like, what's their fucking planet like?
This guy? I don't know, but they.
How do they react? Can they breathe oxygen too?
These, yes, but these and these had a large war.
One.
These guys, well, no, these guys won. They almost wiped these out, but
They had a soft spot.
but their planet was destroyed, so they had to go to Serpo.
Well, this guy's got a fucking bunch of motherfucking clones. So.
How do you know that there was an alien war?
Because EBE1 said so.
I actually watched Star Wars.
What the fuck is EBE1?
They did like a foreign
Surviving.
exchange program.
This
Yeah, we exchanged some
EBE1.
humans for some fucking aliens. They took us back to their fucking planet.
They
And
took
they
12
say,
of
"Fuck
us.
you.
If you go online and look at under the Majestic 12, and actually, so President told Steven Spielberg when that movie was made, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, the president told Steven Spielberg that he hit the nail on the head, and pretty much with
Okay.
because at the end of the movie you can count them. They send
Are these
12 humans
motherfuckers,
in
when
red.
this asteroid or whatever the fuck's gonna go on here pretty soon, are these motherfuckers gonna come help us out, or what are they gonna do?
Well,
2012.
2012, December 21st, 2012.
you know what? They said that that's a very strong possibility. That he wasn't an alien, but he was. Our DNA has been altered 68 times since the caveman days.
Do you believe in do you not believe in Jesus?
Come help us out.
I do.
Do you believe he was an alien?
These
Buy
motherfuckers
stocks
can
and
come
sell
help us
stocks.
out, because if not, then I'll fucking blow all my money and shit and have a good fucking time.
Okay, well, the thing that they're calling an asteroid that's supposed to hit us and
Yeah.
destroy us was actually not an asteroid.
Holy shit, we're done.
It is. It was actually a spaceship of the reptilian kind, but it's since then.
So we're gonna
it's-
get invaded.
No, that's what they were talking about.
It's gonna be a raid.
But
This
check
is
it out.
where this all ties into the military.
Give the
That's very
Avengers.
funny.
Thank God.
No,
Hey,
it
where are
was.
these motherfuckers at? Because if these motherfuckers are like within a couple years out, these motherfuckers are nowhere to be seen. What the fuck's going on?
Well, that's what we're doing. We're forming an alliance with them. We've actually sent 12 of our own to their planet, and they stayed there for 13 years.
How
It's
did we
supposed
get
to
our
be-
guys to
Does
this?
Obama know
They're
about
supposed to be set. I'm pretty sure he knows. I'm pretty sure all the presidents know something about it, but there's no telling.
Make these like this fucking brown dwarf or whatever the fuck it is. It's not really a fucking.
Langfeld went off to his,
He got abducted by aliens, and he's telling us about what's gonna happen when the aliens attack.
You gotta be up on.
I got really getting late started on his alien abduction.
Yes, it's
Dude,
awesome.
we're way past that shit.
They ate through something.
We're next level shit, guys. Determine if I should fucking this live. Those are the reptilians.
Those are the big motherfuckers. Those are the bad ones.
Those are the
Those are
clones.
clones.
Actually, they have other clones that they're creating that have like heads of dogs, but they only have like 3 fingers.
Don't leave, Lee.
Some hot ass bitches invade us with some fucking. Some fucking sluts.
Door is closed. This is what I wanted to hear. Let's hear feedback. You believe everything that he said?
Oh yeah, definitely.
I'm gonna go get his story. I believe it.
This is going on YouTube.
Why were they so interested in the DNA of extraterrestrials and the DNA of humans that may contain extraterrestrials for maybe enhancements? I don't know.
There's a cognizance, I believe, within the intelligence community, particularly CIA, that there are humans among us that might be more extraterrestrial than human. And how do you identify them? That could be a major factor in why they
Absolutely.
were interested in that. And there's also the, I guess you would call contact tracing of like who's who.
Right.
And So what they did reveal that there was an interest in certain families.
How would you understand families?
I understand families to mean bloodlines.
Right.
That they were interested in certain bloodlines, going back to
Ancient times.
who knows, ancient times.
Did they mention other heritages around the planet that through this marker?
I was specifically told that the Cherokee heritage, the Cherokee Nation, had something to do with the phenomenon. And furthermore, that it has something to do with perhaps even the actual existence of Atlantis, that they may have been survivors of Atlantis. But then I can't prove that. I can't divulge a source. I was told by a very credible source.
And what was their take on Atlantis, since we're speaking about it?
I believe that their take is it's an actual, and it's not myth and legend, it's an actual place.
Do they know where it's at?
No.
No.
I don't know where it's at, and they didn't tell me where it's at.
But what would give them that idea that the Cherokee heritage is connected to the Atlantean time, unless they had some sort of DNA to compare it to from Atlantis?
I think because that there's a preponderance of people in the intelligence community and in the military community, especially special operators, who've had these experiences, and when they examine these people and start questioning them about their background, about their family heritages, that it was a preponderance of Cherokee heritage associated with not only having these experiences, but with having implants.
So the suggestion of implants means it's possibly currently ongoing.
Yes, it is, because implants have been recovered from people, not just those who are in the military or intelligence community, but from others.
Well, being in this meeting, John, and listening to the biology and all the tech being, presented to you, and you going through this experience already, your whole life of, these different experiences with ET intelligence, what was going through your mind? What was your emotion?
My feeling was that this was why I had those experiences to begin with. That perhaps I was taken, and I never used the word abducted, because I wanted to be taken. I was only disappointed when they brought me back. But perhaps this is why I was taken, that I may have had this lineage in my own family history. What is that purpose? And I didn't know for many, many years. In fact, it wasn't until 2020 that I knew what I was supposed to do.
And what is that?
And that is to do exactly what I'm doing now with you.
Gotcha.
Is to share my story and to share my experiences with others who may have had similar experiences. And so on July of 2020 was my birthday. There was a CE6 global session, and it was called Harmonic Convergence 2020. My wife and I participated in this global CE6 session, and I just looked up and didn't see anything for a while. And all of a sudden, I saw this bright orb. It was a white, bright orb right in front of me over the mountains. And we were only like 2.5 to 3 miles away from the mountains. So it's above those mountains. My wife saw something simultaneously, but she says, it's over to my right. I said, no, it's right ahead. She was sitting on my right. She should have seen it on her left. But she saw it all the way to her right. And so I looked up, and then the message came to me. And the message was, there are things that you've learned, and it's time for you to share what you know. And that was in reference to their existence, the reality of their existence, and what I learned through my work at CIA. It's time for you to share.
And sharing meaning all the stuff that you've worked with the CIA, or the exposure to, the beings and these visions?
The work was what exposure I had to the reality that there are craft, they're real, and there are beings in these craft. They're here for a purpose, for a reason. And that reason is not so much to warn us of impending doom or anything like that, but to remind us that we're stewards of this planet and that we're doing a terrible job of that.
Do you believe we inherited the planet, or do you believe there was extraterrestrials here way before us that started this?
Well, to answer your question, I believe we are also extraterrestrials. I think we were brought here and that we forgot our origins, and that some of the beings that are being encountered by humans today have been here a long, long time. And they may have had some input into how we developed, and that they have our best interests in mind, but they're concerned about the stewardship of the planet, that we are doing a terrible job of taking care of their planet and our planet, and that when we explode nuclear weapons in our atmosphere like we did decades ago, it not only affected us, it affected them as well. And so that's why they're so interested in us, especially after what we call the nuclear age dawned upon us, that we now have the means to destroy ourselves.
Right.
And by destroying ourselves, we're also destroying them. I think we're their children, and that they have, like a concerned parent, they want us to grow up, but they're giving us enough leeway to become cosmic adults, if you will. And that once we become cosmic adults, we can then join them in the full knowledge of our true origins and why we're here and what our purpose is. And perhaps we can then join them in becoming a spacefaring planet with them.
My name is Joseph Spencer. From May 1970 to October 1997, I served the United States government as a top secret operative, but not in a category that is commonly known or understood. I was known as a man in black. Following 7 years acting as a counterintelligence agent for the CIA, I was recruited for a new assignment that entailed working within above top secret operations. I was aware of the black budget projects, but never knew the context of them due to their high level of secrecy. Even the president was denied access to their inner workings. Annually, billions of dollars are poured into black projects, which operate without any supervision or intrusion. They have full autonomy. The operations deal primarily with advancing military technologies, most of which have been reverse engineered from recovered alien spacecrafts that had either crashed or were shot down by our military. The public, sadly, will never, ever have knowledge of these operations. This transition in my life happened in 1970. The senior black project director was William T. Latham, who had worked under CIA Executive Director Richard Schlesinger. Latham stated that I was the perfect candidate for my new position. I was a foster child, and I had no connections to existing relatives. I had no friends or social life. It was easy for them to erase my past and provide me with a new identity. I gave myself to them as a priest would to his God. But first, my mind had to be erased. I was injected with various forms of mind-altering drugs, LSD, heroin, mescaline, morphine, sodium pentothal, and more. Drug-induced hypnosis followed with antegrade and retrograde amnesia. The goal was to program me to do two things: kill and forget. After 9 months of programming, I had become a man in black. What I later discovered was that not all the men in black were human. About a third were alien hybrids. Their distinctive feature was the absence of whites in their eyes, giving the impression of empty eye sockets. This unsettled me, and it took months to adjust to the reality of alien integration. My assignments largely dealt with UFO sightings and crash sites. In August of 1971, I witnessed my first UFO crash site just north of Edwards Air Force Base in California. Inside the craft were 3 grayed humanoids, 2 dead, 1 still alive. Also in the craft was a human female abductee. The alien humanoids were transported to the base, but 2 witnesses had arrived before us and took several photographs. The first surrendered his camera, but the second fled. When we apprehended him, he resisted, and I was ordered to silence him, which I did. The killing of witnesses was executed with a wand that acted very much like today's taser, but the voltage from the wand would cause immediate cardiac arrest, and the victim's death would be attributed to natural causes. We silenced countless victims, not only men, but women of all ages and even teenagers. The following day, after each kill, our memories were reset, so we would have no recollection of the murders. A good majority of the victims were ufologists and whistleblowers. Among the ufologists I personally silenced were Paul William Cooper, Milton Vigay, Claude Monroe, Anthony Vargas, and noted documentarian Samantha Willis. When my wand malfunctioned with Samantha, I resorted to strangulation. She fought for her life for almost 2 minutes. In recalling this act, I stared into her pleading eyes for the entire duration with absolutely no remorse, guilt, or feelings. That was how effective the mind conditioning was. And it's her face that haunts my dreams more than anyone's to this day.
So they stuffed out a documentarian.
Yep.
Well, that's not good to hear.
Yeah. All right, we're going to move on. In 1954, Dwight Eisenhower signed what's known as the Granada Treaty with the alien gray race. In exchange for shared alien technologies, the Greys were allowed to abduct a number of humans annually for medical examination. The Greys also demanded anonymity from the public. A short time later, human technology took a giant leap forward with circuit chips, fiber optics, and lasers. The Granada Treaty is still active today, but the number of human abductions has increased, despite objections from the world governments. Now, the really interesting part. Every year, at least 8 million children go missing in the world. I can attest that 1/3 of them are abducted by government operatives and transported to any one of the 1,477 underground military installations on the planet, then imprisoned for the remainder of their lives. The children are subjected to biological and genetic experiments, dissections, and mutilations performed not by human scientists, but an alien gray species. During my stay at the Vanguard Underground Base north of Phoenix, Arizona, I witnessed many of these procedures. Because there was no form of anesthesia administered to the young patients, the halls reverberated with the screams of tortured children from morning to night. The ones that perished were incinerated in the installation's crematoriums. My point of contact at this base was Lieutenant Colonel Charles T. Leninger, and he was a human-alien hybrid. And get ready for this. In 1994, the World Population Summit in Cairo, Egypt, had 160 nations participate, where they all agreed that the human population was out of control and must be stopped because the world is running out of resources. An agreement was formed that would mandate the reduction of humans from 6 billion to 800 million by the year 2030. This meant finding a method or methods to wipe out nearly 95% of the population. Solutions were discovered, investigated, tested, then created, and have been in full force since. The procedures have been inflicted onto the human race are as follows. 1. Toxic levels of chemically enhanced fluoride have been secretly added to our drinking water over the last 20 years in every city and community on the planet. I personally oversaw the delivery of fluoride barrels to Denver, Chicago, Tampa, and Minneapolis water departments. The adverse effects of fluoride poisoning to the human body are numerous and debilitating. The effects to children is damage to their neurological development, among other serious ailments. 2. Man-made viruses and diseases. The AIDS virus, which was a designer byproduct of the American Disease Institute, was distributed through vaccines to the public in 1980. Instituted as a preliminary population control tactic, the results were successful and led to more lab-produced viruses that have since been unleashed onto the public. Among those is the development of a mutated version of the common flu to replicate the 1918 influenza pandemic that killed 40 million people. The first strain of this new flu virus will be released to the public in late 2017. So if we see a flu outbreak in the late 2017 or early 2018 that's killing people, we'll know this is true.
Right.
3. Killing us from the air with neurotoxins, barium chloride, cancer microbes, and viruses by way of chemtrails. Released into the skies daily over all inhabited regions by military aircrafts. The effects of these toxins are severe and over time lethal, causing respiratory ailments, cancer, damage to the immune systems, and sterilization in men. Since the chemtrail plan was implemented, sperm count in men has dropped nearly 50%. If this isn't reversed soon, the human race will face early extinction. Now the grand finale. This is some scary shit. In March 1997, an event known as the Phoenix Lights became the most infamous UFO sighting in history. A mile-wide vessel, clearly not man-made, flew slowly and silently over the state of Arizona and was witnessed by 10,000 people, including the governor of Arizona. To date, there has been no reasonable explanation. But for every witness interviewed, the craft was as real as anything they'd ever seen. Their lives were transformed. They now believe that we truly are not alone. However, there is another truth, for I know what they really saw. In 1986, while stationed at an underground installation near Boulder, Colorado, I was introduced to Project Skybeam by Lieutenant General Andrew Garris. I was then led down a corridor and into a large hangar where a stealth bomber hovered only 20 feet above me. I stood there confused. Then Garris looked over at me and smiled, then asked if I was certain of what I was seeing. I replied, of course. What else could it be? I was then shocked to find out that this wasn't a real craft. It was a projected hologram. Since the early 1950s, scientists have been developing holographic technology, and over the years improved it to a state that we can only imagine. As I stood there staring at the bomber, which looked so absolutely real and solid that I could reach up and touch it, I contemplated the possibilities. What if this projection was 1,000 feet up in the sky? How would anyone know that that was an illusion? The Phoenix Lights craft, witnessed by 10,000 people, was the first grand-scale skybeam test upon the public. It succeeded beyond expectations. In October 1938, Orson Welles unleashed his War of the Worlds radio broadcast to the American public. It was so realistically portrayed, vast portions of the population went into panic. Terrified citizens scrambled to evacuate their cities in droves. America had been easily tricked by very simple means. To amplify this response, those who are truly in power of not only our country, but all the countries on the planet, and who are the true purveyors of the depopulation process, have formulated the final stage of their sinister plan. In the year 2024, a global event will alter the course of mankind's future. The world will stand witness to a massive alien invasion. Thousands of projected holographic alien warships will blanket the skies, sending people into a global panic. Real military crafts within the holograms will inflict actual damage to the surrounding areas to sell the gimmick. And as a result of the ensuing human chaos, a one-world government will immediately form without any resistance from the people. They will be the new world order. Once this happens, we as a people will be doomed to enslavement and accelerated depopulation. With that said, the only hope for human salvation is to acquire and spread the knowledge of these activities and agendas. Resist, retaliate, then conquer this imposing enemy. The time is now, as humanity is rapidly approaching its final days. The knowledge of what's coming is taking its toll on me. I see all of these people living their lives, enjoying themselves, planning their futures, oblivious to the fact that it's all going to end soon. Here I am at a park where children are playing, and in the skies above, I can see the chemtrails poisoning the air and slowly killing us all in plain sight. I've never felt so helpless. I want to scream out to the world, but I'd only be laughed at, ridiculed. When Claire said the memoirs were a fabrication, I secretly wished she was right. Then I could sleep at night. But I know, beyond a reasonable doubt, that it's all true. That Joe was being completely forthright. I saw it in his eyes. I heard the tremor in his voice when he spoke about it. It didn't come off as an admission. It was more of a deeply concerned confession. He was scared for us all. And that says a lot, coming from a man who was a government assassin.
This creature is about 3 feet tall. It looks for all the world like a child who is on the last stages of dying of malnutrition. It looks exactly like this, and it has a strange smell which once you smell it, you shall never forget it. This creature is known by the Zulu-speaking people of South Africa as a mantindane. The word mantindane comes from the verb ntinda, which means to abuse, to fiddle with, and to torture by interfering with the victim's genitals and other private parts. This is an exact description of the Mantindan. It does exactly that. For hundreds of years, even mighty nations such as the Zulus, even powerful warrior nations such as the Botswanas and Xhosas lived in mortal fear of these creatures. As a result of several years of experience, I would like to advance this argument. The Mantindane creatures do not come from any star or star system in space. I say that these creatures come from our future. Why do I say so? Because this creature arrives on Earth completely protected by a helmet and a suit of what looks like metal, flexible metal of some kind. The creature's hands, feet, and head are completely protected against our Earth's atmosphere. So is the Ngadla here. It is completely sheathed in heavy metal. But with the Mantindan, the story is different. Mantindanes have been seen out in the open many times. their heads completely bare and their hands bare to the wrist, completely unprotected by any material or metal whatsoever. These creatures walk through our world as if they own it. A world in which there are so many poisonous substances. You will find Mandindanese bareheaded, their hands completely uncovered, in a world where logically they should be covered from head to foot. These creatures, furthermore, are capable of impregnating earth women. They seek fluids and flesh from us human beings. If these creatures were a species of creatures from some far planet, they wouldn't do that. They wouldn't be able to impregnate our women. They wouldn't be able to do what they are doing to us. These are our descendants. And when you have been worked over by them, you will understand that what they are doing to you, they do it with angry consciences. They are taking revenge upon us for what we have done to our future a few thousand years from now. And I am firmly convinced of this, and all things that have happened to me since that terrible day have served to confirm that these are our descendants, not aliens from some far galaxy, no.
Of any extraterrestrial civilizations working on planet Earth, helping any government institutions or organizations or projects side by side?
Yes, at least 5 of them work, different extraterrestrial civilizations work up at Groom Lake.
Right.
And then inside the Earth, there's at least 800 separate civilizations that live in there.
Absolutely.
How can there be that much room? You have no idea how much room there is in there. And they say, well, is the Earth hollow? No, it's not hollow, but they have these huge spaces, you know, under there.
People don't know how much volume Earth is.
Absolutely.
And how much water covers it, too.
Right.
And the best place to hide things is the ocean.
Absolutely.
And under these other caverns that you talk about.
And the amazing creatures in the ocean.
Yes.
Fantastic creatures.
Yes.
And I saw the video the other day of a guy who was a deep sea diver on making the oil rigs.
Oh, yeah.
And he made a presentation that was very scary. He saw something, and it scared the living out of him. And it was uncomfortable just watching him tell this story because it was so believable. Okay, when this one grabbed onto the guy and tried to take him, and he got away from it.
Whoa. Yeah, there's a lot of beings also that live in the water out there in the depths that we're investigating to this day. So it's very interesting because I used to film for National Geographic and Discovery Channel underwater film, and learning every day they're discovering a new species of, seaweed, bacteria, a fish, just like in the Amazon, they're discovering a new species every day of something that we didn't know of, whether it's an insect or whatever. And I think there's a lot more discovery that's going to come out that's going to be ET related due to genetics and the things that are coming in and out of projects that people may be carrying out on their skin. They don't even know it. And a lot of mutation factors are happening around the planet that we're noticing through, the testing of DNA.
They spent 50 years trying to prove the Loch Ness Monster, this or that. Of course it's there. But trying to prove it is something else.
Right. There's a misconception out there with these grays What could you tell me about that?
They're made on Zeta Reticuli.
Right.
And they are cybernetic organisms. They're essentially glorified robots.
Mm.
And anybody can use them. Good ETs, bad ETs, whatever. They're just there to do a job, whatever Rare has to do.
Who is in control of this planet? It's obviously not us.
Right.
You know, there's some other outsiders looking in. And what could you tell us about that?
Okay, you're going to get opinion because, you know,
Right.
There's no way I can.
No, I understand.
The people that made us, when we're born, we're given a soul. The soul is one of the most fantastic things ever devised. It's huge. It has a capacity for so much information. And it has to be educated and matured from the day we are born. So all of us here, you, me, all of us have lived at least 200 or 300 lifetimes before we got here. The reason we're here is because after our last time, it was apparent that we were not candidates to go ahead unless we learned more about how to live our lives with integrity, without envy, without hate, without greed, and to express our loves to our families each and every day. That's what we're doing here on Earth. And Earth is not the only planet. There's billions of Earths just like this one that have the same people trying to learn the same things, learning how to live with integrity.
Is it possible there could be another John Lear energy or soul on another planet right now?
Probably a billion.
Or another dimension, possibly?
Absolutely.
Right. Because we're everywhere all the time, and we're working multiple places, is what I believe in. Multiple planetary systems.
Serious problems. I'm not saying that at all. There are some who do. But the bottom line is, when you look at the whole picture and you go up the ladder, okay, we are not the enemy. The enemy isn't human at all. But it's pushing all our buttons so that we're so busy looking at each other and so neurotic about each other that we're not looking at the real reality here, the real cause, which is another race or races that are here who are totally playing games with us, feeding off our energy, and hoping that we destroy ourselves so that they can keep the planet
and
themselves.
Really, let's say who it is again. It's the Orion Group.
It's the Orion Group. It's a group that is on its way here now from Alpha Draconis. They're the real culprits behind this whole deal.
Alpha Draconis or Orion or both those two?
Alpha Draconis. They're the real culprits behind this whole thing.
Above the Orion Group?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So
then there's Orion. Then there's Orion, the Orion Group. Then you've got the Greys.
And where did the Giza intelligence fit in here?
They were just a group that were totally independent, that came in and did their own thing. They were perceived as gods, and they played the role out. And they got stuck in it. You know, they got stuck in the ego part of it. We're gods, we can do this, we have all this technology, and they just played it out for all that it was worth.
Okay.
And to be honest with you, at this point, they're not really much of a factor anymore. You know, Giza intelligence, they're not much of a factor at all anymore.
What should a human being do if they encounter a renegade Zeta Reticulan? What would your advice be?
Stand in their truth. If you can't run, stand in your truth and just look at them. If they try to project their thoughts into your head, you just stand firm with who you are and you say, no, you are not coming into my head, you are not taking me over, and you are not going to violate my free will. I don't give a damn who you are. Leave me alone. Period. Because if it's a benevolent, they will not try to do it. They will not try to take you over. They will not try to put crap into your head so they can feed off of your fear. Period.
Okay. Excellent. Okay, I'm going to skip the Giza intelligence for the moment then, and we'll go to the Alpha Draconis.
Can we take a short time out?
Oh, definitely.
Thank you. You know, Rick, there's something else I want to stress here, and that is, and this is something that the Andromedans have really stressed. There is no race any better than us. Just because they're different, just because they're more evolved, doesn't mean that they're better. We are equal. We're just not maybe as aware as they are. But that doesn't mean that any race is any better or any less. In fact, we're all equal.
So we
We're
should
just
not worship anybody.
Hell, no, absolutely not. That's how we got into this mess in the first place. Absolutely. If you want to worship somebody, worship the God within you. That's it. Worship no one else. And if you're going to have a tyrant in your life, let it be that part of you that's critical of you. Let that be your only tyrant. Don't give anybody else any power outside of your physical form to be a tyrant, to control you, or manipulate you in any way. Be yourself. Because if you are yourself, you're a part of God, and that part of you knows what to do. It knows the right way to live. And, and this is really interesting. Because of our genetic makeup, of the 22 different races, and all of the DNA and the racial memories that we have and the genetics that we have, because of the fact that we are spirit, do you know, and this is an incredible thing, do you know that the Andromedans actually consider us royalty? They consider us royalty. We obviously aren't acting like royalty, but we're the only ones in our galaxy that can make the claim to having the genetics that we have and the possibilities and the capabilities of doing what we can do as a race. We're the only ones. They actually consider every single one of us royalty. Now, think about that.
I guess all beings that would try and be spiritual and raise their spirituality in essence would be royalty.
Yes, I suppose that's true.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about the ringleaders then of this whole orchestration that's going here on Earth. According to your Andromedan sources, there are 22 races originally colonized the Earth, the first race being the reptilians from Alpha Draconis. What was the nature of their colony here?
Well, they're Hyperborean. Basically, they're explorers. And they're also genetic engineers. They would just colonize. They would take samples. They would hang a flag and say, this belongs to us, just like we did with the moon. But except we weren't the first ones there. Exactly what we've done. They were explorers. And they would just go to a place, they would see what was there, they would explore it, if there were minerals that they needed, if there were other life forms, organisms, whatever it was that they needed, they took, and then when it was done, they had enough, they moved on, and just kept exploring and expanding their realm of exploration or territory.
You said they were dumped here.
Originally they were. They were dumped in Alpha Draconis. Nobody knows exactly where they came from, and my understanding is that even in their ancient history, they don't know exactly where they came from. But they were left in Alpha Draconis because that particular system offered them the highest probability of survival. And from there, they were able to create craft, space travel. I mean, they're magnificent in what they did, and they're to be commended for what they did. But the fact that they need to control and dominate and manipulate to the degree, sorry, I have a problem with that. And so does half of the other of the galaxy. That's just the way they are. They're the biggest bully. Nobody can beat them up or wipe them out, so therefore they have no motivation to change. So that's the space they hold. And, the Andromedans actually consider them the ultimate warriors, which says a lot, for whatever reasons.
A lot of bullies end up destroying themselves.
Well, that's something that may possibly need to happen, we hope soon, or I hope soon. Because we need to be free. We need to have our shackles that we've been put around us let go of, so that we can really evolve. And we have awesome potential. We really do. We have been, as a race, we have been through so much here. We have so much experiences, and because of our emotions, which is really our strength, which really sets us apart from all the other races out there, even the other human races. We have tremendous capabilities to create things. And, but we need to get clear of what's real and what isn't. We also need to get really clear about being able to create our own future, to create our own reality, and not have somebody say, well, that doesn't work for me, so you're going to have to do this. Play God and ruler over us.
Sense of responsibility is so important in all of this.
It's with any sense of power, with any knowledge, comes responsibility. That's exactly right. And the divine plan is one of freedom, free expression. Free expression, free expression, free expression. It is not one where they want to implant us and they say, you are going to be a worker, you're going to be this, you're going to be that. Sorry, that's not what it's all about. And if anybody tries to force that stuff down your throat, fight it.
Okay, so the Andromedans tell you that the Alpha Draconians are here now. Where?
There are 1,833 of them that have been living underground between 100 and 200 miles beneath the surface. They've been here, some of them have been here a long, long time. They have lifespans that are thousands of years. They're carnivorous. They're not friendly to mankind, at least the ones that are here.
Are you saying carnivorous, they eat humans?
Yes. And they need to be, they won't eat a dead human. It has to be alive at the time of the killing. Their preference is children. You know, and we've been told, you shouldn't talk about that. You know, there are other people say, well, you better not talk about the reptilians. Well, you know, bull. You know, why not? According to the Andromedans, they're responsible for 31,712 children disappearing in the last 25 years from the United States. These children were food. And I'm supposed to just shut up and not say anything about it because people don't want to hear it? That's tough. That's tough. You know, Westchester County, in the last 5 years, 3,000 children in Westchester County, New York, have vanished without a trace. Where are they going? Why are we allowing this to happen? And why should people want to stay in denial about it?
Now, how are they able to do this? How are they able to? How are they able to? How are they able to do it? How are they able to come up out of this from underground and do it, or do they have?
There are tunneling systems everywhere. They're being helped by the Greys, and also there are groups within the higher echelon that are actually helping them.
The Babylonians, the Sumerians, the Phoenician Canaanites, the Egyptians, especially the Sumerians, all the ancient peoples of the world talked about the reptile aliens. Well, after the program, I got a phone call from a guy who's, later on I found out, is an extremely wealthy businessman in Las Vegas. He buys and sells hotels and commercial properties in Vegas, and he was the biggest there. And he said, I'm a Christian, and I have 5 men who work for me in my office, and they're Christians, and they all belong to the same church. We all go to the same church, and all 6 of us are in the office, and we were hearing you today. And he said, when you mentioned reptile aliens, I had to call you and tell you. Every year, we go somewhere in the world on vacation, and my company pays for everything. And he said, so I take, and all 6 families go together on a vacation somewhere. And he says, and last year, now this was like in '88, so he's talking about '87. And he said, last year we decided to go camping for a couple of weeks in Colorado. And he says, we were up in the mountains and we broke camp one morning, and we walked up to the top of this mountain. We were almost there anyway at camp, and then the next morning when we broke camp, we walked up to the top of the mountain to look over the lay of the land. And he says that out in the valley, we could see that there had been an area that had been cleared away. It was like a round area that had been cleared away. And there was a circle of people out there, and they were all wearing robes, and they were all holding hands and swaying back and forth, singing and chanting. You could barely hear them. But he said, but it was very quiet where we were. We could see that there was some kind of a ritual dancing or swaying back and forth in a circle. They were all holding hands. And there was obviously somebody in the middle, like a priest or something in the middle. And he said, this is out in the middle of nowhere, that these people are here with this thing that they're doing. And he said, we're up here in the mountains looking down on them. And he said, while we were standing there looking at them, all of a sudden, a second figure popped up out of nowhere. But it was bigger than the man that was in the middle. It's in the middle too, but it's much bigger. And it pointed up at us. And he said, and all the singing stopped, everybody stopped and pointed. And he said, we knew we'd been had. And he said, we didn't know what was going on, but whatever it was, it just popped in out of nowhere, pointed up at us, and everybody is now pointing at us. And he said, so we figured we better just get out of here. He said, when we turned around, it was standing behind us. That thing which was down there was already behind us. That's how quick it moved. He said, when we turned around to run, there was a reptile alien standing behind us. He said this thing was at least 7 to 7.5 foot, to maybe 8 foot tall, had a reptile man's head, but it was a reptile head. It was very muscular, looked like a human body on the ordinary of a human body, but a reptile body, extremely muscular. And he said, and it was looking at us, and he said, it cast some kind of a spell on us so that the children and the women, no one could move. We were like frozen. And he said, and even nobody could say anything, nobody could cry, nobody could run, nobody could do anything. And he said we were staring at it, and it was looking at us, but it had control over us. It had locked us so that we couldn't move, we couldn't scream, we couldn't do anything. And he said, and this thing was gazing at all of us, looking at the children, looking at the women. He said, this reptile alien, and he says, we're just Christians in a church. But we saw a reptile alien. This thing was not of this world. And he said this thing was looking at all of us. And then he said it looked at the men, and the look he gave us, we understood. He didn't say anything, but we knew. He was saying, I'm going to leave you alone. But when I leave here, you better get out of here. And he said, the alien walked over like he was leaving, is gone. Just like they was gone. And he said when he was gone, the moment he was gone, everyone came back to life. And the babies were screaming, the women were yelling, screaming. Everybody came back to life instantly. And he says, we ran like we were totally out of our minds, running back to the cars. We ran down the hill, got in the cars, and the women were screaming, the children were yelling, and he says, and we drove back, and he said it was the most incredible, horrible experience. And he says, all the guys in my office will tell you, we saw a reptile alien in Colorado. So when you're talking about, he says, so when you're talking about reptile aliens in the ancient world, I got news for you. There's one we know for sure in Colorado. We saw him.
Tell us what's in the book and how it's doing.
Yeah. Well, the book is really my experiences as I lived them in research and development of the Army under General Trudeau, Arthur Trudeau. And he drew me back in and put me in charge of that and established a Foreign Technology Division for me. And these were the artifacts on a crashed flying saucer, which we used the word applied engineering. Dr. Teller was still alive, knows he helped him. And we fed these things. He gave me the job of finding industry or scientists that were close to these items and feed us to them in normal R&D projects.
And you're saying these items came from somewhere else?
They came from a flying saucer.
How do you know that?
Because they were marked in the files as coming from New Mexico.
Roswell?
Yeah, it's Roswell. Well, I think some came, there might be another crash, but these came from New Mexico and Roswell especially. And General Trudeau gave me the job of working out a program, put these things out, feed them to industry, but there was provisions feeding it. They could have the patents, but they had to feed them out back to us as a competitive edge of the Army and to the American people and the world if necessary. Like the Japanese interviewed me, and I told them we put the integrated circuit out, and we also gave it to you. And I told the Japanese this right at the interview at Roswell.
Give me a little laundry list of the things that, the technologies that are at least partially responsible from the Roswell.
Well, there's the number one was the integrated circuit. Number two in importance was laser, because I had some laser instruments also. Then fiber optics came out of this. The imaging devices or night viewing devices came from this. Some of the work we did on electromagnetism and the ICBMs and came from this.
Imagine the scientists and technicians and the companies that worked on this stuff are not real happy with your version of history.
No, I haven't heard anything. In fact, I've heard from scientists, at least a dozen of them since then, and they're supporting my everything in the book. They say it's true. In fact, I just got a letter before I left from McDonald's nephew, or son, and he told me that a lot of people come from IBM, from the Hughes, and from the White Pageant Air Force, and said that I filled some of the holes in which they've been wondering about for many years. And I just got this the day I left home, 2 days yesterday.
So is there any question, I mean, that elements of our military, our government, have known for a long time that UFOs are real, they're from somewhere?
Oh, sure they do. I know, certain in 1947, well, in 1947, no, I'll back up. I saw the body then. I didn't see UFOs. The UFOs came into the picture later years, 10 years later, for me. And also I worked out the omissions weren't in the UFOs. In fact, George, I've even told you, I think, that I was not interested in seeing UFOs. I was all interested in what was in those UFOs. You know, I told them I'm not interested in seeing something fly in the air, but I like to know what's inside that thing.
Did you physically handle the artifacts from
Oh yeah, I had them. They were in my possession.
What things did you have? What did you have?
I had an integrated circuit, like the size of a quarter. I had a bunch of wires. Colors were coming out of it. I don't say wires. I didn't know what they were. I didn't know if they were wires or anything. They actually, well, I didn't know what they were. They just said were emitting light. I had a piece of metal. Atoms were lined in it. So tough, paper thin, you couldn't break it, bend it, or anything. I had super tenacity fibers. That was, atoms were lined in it. You couldn't burn it, you couldn't cut it. And later on, the nearest thing in this world that we found to that was a spider web. There's a spider spins an atomic aligned web.
You know, people say military can't keep a secret. There's no way a secret like this could be kept.
We kept a secret one way. We had to keep the secret for two reasons. One was a climate opinion within our own government. The people higher up in the government didn't like the military, or the army. And if you remember, in those days, NASA took space. We did Project Horizon in '59. It's part of it's in the book. First 50, that's 310 pages long. We were going to put a military colony on the moon. They took that away from us. They took atomics from us. With atomic engine, but we still kept developing atomics, and we did the ion engine and some other things that maybe the world could use today, like the portable atomic installation went to McMurdo Air Force Base. Made 28 million gallons of water a day, 10 million in 4 years. Then when they came back, they destroyed it on us. We did the first heart pump. We did some atomic ion that took nitrogen in the air and made a fuel you could run an automobile from it. And they used Pu-238, what we used. And most of the probes that went to Mars and Saturn and so forth and Jupiter, our little engine was in those. The Soviets stole it, some of their spies. In fact, I have satellites up in space going right today, but they're leaking because they didn't do a good job with them.
Back to the idea of the cover-up. I know you've said before that it wasn't really an active cover-up.
No, because I was telling them in later interviews, if you let the government alone, it'll cover itself up. Really, the way we handled it, one was a climate of opinion, as I said. The other was within our own government we had enemies who would have been glad to destroy all this on us and to have us as kooks. So what we did, I got the job of going and developing a program, which is discussed in the book how it was done. And through this program, we started feeding it out through industry. But this was not known, not put on paper. They went out as normal research and development proposals, not to name something.
Yeah, you didn't put out a report that said, here's some alien stuff, figure it out.
We put our regular research and development proposal that came from somebody's brain. And also this was known among a select few, mostly combat officers, head-to-head. We kept this among ourselves, because otherwise we were certain that they would have destroyed our organization, and we had a good organization. General Trudeau pulled it together just a couple years before. They would have destroyed our organization and labeled us as kooks and taken our budget away. So it had to be. We didn't cover because we gave it to industry with the provisions, and I'll repeat this, the provisions were to come back to us with what you prove, the competitive edge of the Army, give it to the people and to the world if necessary, and take the patents. We encourage you to take the patents. And I have this in paper written by generals in 1963.
What do you think it is now? I mean, your organization, that organization's gone. All the people
I
who are
guess it's
involved are
gone.
gone.
Yes, it's gone.
Do you suppose there are still people who are active in
Well,
this?
George, all I can tell you, yes, I had some things happen to me just a few weeks ago, and I won't name where it happened. I had two colonels come up to me in uniform and say it's true. All this happened. I had a lieutenant colonel came up to me and says, I worked at Hangar 51. It's true. What you say in the book is true. I had a captain come up to me in uniform. It was on the military base. Said he'd been test pilot on B-2, and what I said in there was true. And I have other scientists call me. First one endorsed me was our friend down in Austin. He was very proud. He called me up. He said, I endorse you. I told him, well, thanks. And I've had other scientists call me lately. And just a few days ago, 2 days ago, I got this letter from McDonald's. And he's going to get his father to talk to me. Because he was a big NASA consultant. And NASA also now has Project Horizon, the whole 310 pages. And they were amazed. And Hal put it out, gave it to them. And they were amazed at such a document. And also, I went to Senator Glenn about a year and a half ago, and he was interested in the cart we made that ran with water. The fluid hydrodynamics came from the saucer. And also, he wanted Project Horizon, which I gave him a copy. And Senator Glenn, by the way, he's in the news lately. I asked him, I told him about flying saucers, and he said, well, Colonel, I'm an agnostic. And I told him, yes, but Senator, you didn't say you didn't believe. And he laughed. He sort of smiled when he said, but that's what he told me actually in his office.
Yeah, you said a couple of other military people have come forward and said, yeah,
Yes, just in the last
think
few
it's
days.
true. Any people from that other era that have come forward to support you and said, yeah, Phil, I was there when you were there?
Yes, a couple people.
Publicly?
Yes, not publicly, because I say I don't have the right to put their names out in public unless they decide to do it themselves.
Got any grief? Has anyone from military or government told you, hey, you're doing the wrong thing?
No, nobody. I haven't had I had a few critics, but one of the critics that you know about, he shook hands with me out there, and then they said he was afraid to death. I don't know what for, but anyway, he came up and shook hands with me. And as critics, I figured this is the truth.
What about the press reviews of the book?
They've been excellent. Most of the reviews have been excellent. I just got one the other day from Michael Lindham, and it was an excellent job. In fact, Hal sent it to me and said, amazing, extraordinary article. I have that outside in my case. But they all so far, it's all been receptive. And but the biggest thing, they're confirming it. And the biggest thing that I was impressed with when I was in Roswell and Albuquerque and places, were the people coming up to me with their children, want me to talk to their young children. At Albuquerque, a Hispanic woman with a 9-year-old boy sat for 3 hours. I was wondering why she was sitting there. She waited till the line was gone to sign the books. And I got into 7 o'clock and I got out at 11:30. She waited over 3 hours so I could talk to her little boy. But the people who come up to me with their children. I had my 3 grandchildren out there. And one newspaperman said his grandchildren are here watching him. It has to be true.
Were you and your group ever able to determine where these things are from, why they're here?
No, we were never able to determine. Although one of the remisses of things that I missed out on, and I say this, and I think the greatest gift God ever gave, we created man in his image. Yet we had the greatest artifact that they gave us was those bodies, and we didn't do enough on those. That partially, I can take the blame. I had the money, I had the organization, I had the people to do it, and we didn't go far enough.
Autopsies were done on bodies, though,
but
right?
not enough. We didn't do enough. How they functioned, how their brain functioned. And we came to a conclusion even in those days that these were, the reason most flying saucers have failed is because our conclusion was that this being is part of the guidance system. He's part of that saucer. And I had a little story I told, which even the Lindemann picked up. One day I was walking with a general in the hall, General Trudeau, and I made the statement, my son must be a little crazy. He said, Indians talk to him. And General stopped and said, don't say that again, Phil, because people, there are certain relationships with motors and solid items that humans have, which we don't understand. Now this goes back to what our discussions on the extraterrestrial. He was part of the guidance system, or it, whatever it is, because it has no sex organ thing. It was part of the guidance system. That's why we failed in propulsion and guidance system of these flying saucers.
But we didn't figure it out.
We never figured it out. We didn't do enough on that body. We didn't even do 10% of what we should have done.
But you saw the reports.
I had the reports. See, the Walter Reed, the laboratory Walter Reed, was our laboratory. We financed it. That was ours. And that's what did the talk that I had in my files. But it didn't go near far enough. The skin, marvelous instrument. Look at our skin. This is one of the wonders of creation, our skin.
Where do you suppose that stuff is now, those reports? Those kind of reports?
I have no idea, George. When I left the Army, I was one of the men who was supposed to see that nothing was stolen from the Army. They were in my file, what happened to them. I've called some friends recently, given some ideas where they might be to try to run them down. But I don't know. You know how the military operates? The burn bag and the microfilm. In those days, we microfilmed a lot of stuff. Well, we had. I have no idea what happened. Remember, I've been gone almost 40 years now.
What about the few people who have criticized you? They're saying, well, why are you coming out now? You're violating your security oath. What are you telling us?
Well, I've been asked that question many, many
Yeah,
times.
I know.
Number one is I had an oath with the general, so we wouldn't discuss this. The general said, when I die, I feel you're released from your oath. He died 3 years ago, and I started to write it. Number two is I couldn't talk about people who were with us that I had no right to talk about. In intelligence, like a newspaper man, your source is not named unless he gives you permission to name him. I had no right to do that. And so my own family criticized. My son says, 35 years you didn't talk. You didn't even tell us. So that's right. Why should I tell anybody? I had an oath, was an honorable man, a great man. And I wasn't about to betray that oath. And not only that, I had never any intention of writing a book or putting it on paper. That never entered my mind when I was in the military. I never thought I'd write a book or even do a movie on it. That never entered my head.
Anything else you want people to understand about this?
Well, it's the truth as I lived it. And when I say with the young people I met out there and the young people who have been talking to me, and even my nephew who first put the idea in my hand, we're not going to panic, he called me lately, and he said all the people in his factory now are all for it. In fact, he just sent me 7 books to 1 million doors that they bought. And all I got to say, it's the truth, and I think it's a better world for this, but also there's dangers in this. I even told the general one day, what are we unleashing on the world in this and the greatest? He said, well, I hope that people that come later will recognize the danger. He said, but not my lifetime, Phil, and this is in the book. Well, he died 3 years ago. I'm 82 years old. I happen to be still around. And that's what I think great developments. Well, one thing, give you an example of what happened. I had a file, von Neumann's file, on artificial intelligence. It was called Project Rainbow, and I did nothing with it. And I should have done something with it, but I put it in the file and left it there. But the supercomputer was not developed yet. Look what's happened. Look at the imaging devices in hospitals. Those imaging devices saved my life just a few months ago when I was operated on for my stomach and a hernia. We started a heart pump. Look what developed from that. So I hope that these developments continue, and that we're not, say, hurried by politics or petty jealousies, that they continue with scientists the way they should continue. We did them. We happened to do it. I think we succeeded in a way. But you see how why we had to keep it quiet, because of the forces, interaction, the forces. We couldn't give it to CIA, and I say this in the book, because we thought we had to keep this from the Soviet. When Roswell happened, Stalin gave instructions to get this in from whatever happened there, get the information. We were confronted with the KGB and the Soviet Union, at the time an enemy, and we were confronted like, as I say, people criticize me, they say, well, you're kooky. I told them, well, I'm in good company. General Marshall, General Trudeau, General MacArthur, von Braun, Olbert, Wilbur Smith from I told them, I'm in good company. That's the company I'd rather be in, with those kooks.
Those are all people that knew about this.
They know about all this. I'd rather be in that company than the ones criticizing me.
This procedure in the going to have to clean the blood doesn't work, then I've got probably a few more months to make it before my kidneys shut down, you know. So that's kind of why I'm kind of going along with the interview at this time.
You're seeing that what you went through is just too important for people not to know about.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can you just, can we start at the beginning with your military career and just walk through what exactly your experiences were?
Was drafted into the military and got into the U.S. Army. After that, I was sent to the Signal Training Center in eastern United States.
What year would this be?
58. I went through the Signal Training course. And at that time, I went through the radio teletype course and also the cryptography course, crypto. They had 5 instructors that were getting out of military service. So they pulled the top 5 students, and I was 3rd in the class. So I got pulled as an instructor.
Now, were you at this time also working yet for CIA?
No.
Not yet?
No. After one day, my boss came to me, and he said, how would you like to, make some extra money? And I said, oh, money is good. So he's explained to me that he could put it through. I would have to get a top secret White House Q clearance for the job, And I thought, boy, must be a pretty exclusive thing, And I said, well, what is this? And he said that I'm director for the CIA for Eastern United States, And I said, oh, I didn't know that. And he said, you weren't supposed to. After about 6 weeks, my security clearance came through, and I got my CIA card. It was an ID card, like a credit card, where I could just go up to the door and slice it, walk right in. And my name at that time, I used a artificial name too. Never used my real name. I started working with him on the project he was on, and that was Project Blue Book, which was kind of partially a fraud.
You're saying some of the Blue Book cases were
Yes.
were completely fictitious?
Yes. But the cases that we got came from, I think it was Fort Belvoir, Maryland.
Fort Belvoir?
Yeah. And it didn't come from the Pentagon, or it didn't come from CIA headquarters. But we would get reports about a certain sighting that they had in Mexico or Italy or something like that. And then we had people that would follow through on it, that would go out and interview the people to see if they were nutcases or if it was real,
So they'd be going overseas frequently?
I wasn't, but I always stayed statewide. But the people we had working with us from the CIA would do that. We would get like a new report probably a couple times a week. I was coming into the Army fresh off the farm, so I really didn't have much knowledge of anything. But my boss filled me in on Project Blue Book and what they had found so far, as far as grays and aliens and the Roswell incident.
How did you feel when this first got dumped on you? When you first learned about this?
I was just kind of overwhelmed with all of this, you know. And I said to him, I don't know if I'm going to be able to be a judge of this type of thing. What's real, what's not, when I don't have much knowledge of it, you know. So...
What did he say?
He said, well, we have to build the information as we go, and you'll see how this thing is working out.
And then the other thing is, of course, you really weren't able to tell family or close friends, obviously.
No, I couldn't tell anybody. In fact, I had to take a vow that I wouldn't tell anybody. A lot of it for 40 years, and more of it for 50 years, which is up in 2010.
You're doing all this crypto work. You're looking at images, photographs, video. It's 1958, maybe the fall of 58. What happened after this?
At that time, the Project Blue Book thing kind of went pot, you know. If you remember, back in those days, they kind of declared it as a nothing, you know.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And
they were telling the world all UFOs are misidentifications, hoaxes,
balloons,
psychological issues, whatever.
Yes.
Yeah.
So my boss came to me and he says, we've both got a new assignment. And he says, oh, I said, where are we going? Oh, he says, we're going to the Capitol. We're going to be part of the Eisenhower push. He's trying to find out something about all about these aliens that MJ-12 was supposed to find out, but never sent back reports to him.
Now, MJ-12, the UFO control group, were they calling it MJ-12 at that time? Yes.
They called us in, went into the Oval Office, and President Eisenhower was there and Nixon, and they said, we called the people in from MJ-12 from Area 51 and S4, but they told us that the government had no jurisdiction over what they were doing. So being a general, past general, you didn't tell them to go to hell without any real good reason, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So he said, I want you and your boss to fly out there. I want you to give them a personal message. He says, I want you to tell them, whoever is in charge, tell them that to get in, they have this week, coming week, to get into Washington and to report to me. And if they don't, I'm going to get the First Army from Colorado, and we're going to go over, we're going to take the base over. I don't care what kind of classified material you got. We're going to rip this thing apart.
Eisenhower was going to invade
Area 51. Yeah, with the First Army.
So you go out with your superior.
Yes.
You fly out. You land. What happens? Can you describe this whole process? What you saw?
It took us the 13 or 15 miles south to S4 and like different garage door openings.
Okay.
And in these garage door openings, they had like different saucer crafts. The very first one had the Roswell craft in. It was kind of crashed up, but apparently every alien that was in it died except for a couple.
So you see the Roswell craft, and what are some of the others that you see?
Well, the Roswell craft was really strange because it looked like real heavy aluminum foil. We could rock next to it, and you could rock it. The whole thing probably weighed 150, 300 pounds.
Could they tell what the source of power was of this craft?
Yeah, it was a like a reverse gravitational thing of some kind. In fact, one later on, I got the mathematical code for reversing gravity in a 3x5 card. I guess there are different types of grays and so on.
How did you see that evidence?
Well, at the later on at S4, we viewed the autopsy film, and then the colonel said, "What we've got in here is we're interviewing a gray alien."
All right, right there. How did you feel at that moment?
Well, I thought, boy, we had no idea we were going to see the real thing. All we saw was film.
You had to have a little bit of heart racing at that moment.
My boss was able to go in and had a partial interview with him.
So what did this gray alien look like? Could you describe him a little bit?
This one looked a little bit oriental.
So I'm just wondering if it looked almost human, what about this didn't look human?
No, it didn't look human as far as the skin tone and basically the shape of it and the size.
How was its head size compared with a normal human, for example?
Brain was kind of a little bit bigger. And some of the nose was very, very small. And the ears were just like holes. Mouth was very small.
Now, why were they bringing you out here at all, anyway, to see an alien? What was the point?
To go back and tell the president they actually had one.
So he did not know at this point if there was an alien at S4?
No.
What did you do then at Area? Were you done, or did you have other things to do with
Yeah,
S4?
so basically we were kind of done. Went back to Area 51. They took us into the main building, and there we saw a U-2, which of course we didn't know existed. And a model of the SR-71.
Yeah, the Blackbird.
So, but like I mentioned earlier, it was not a model of the current Blackbird.
It was an earlier version.
But an early version.
Did you go directly to Washington after this?
Yes.
Or did you go somewhere else? How did they get, did you fly regular airline or?
We flew back to the commuter plane back to the air base, and then took President Eisenhower's Lockheed Electra back to Washington.
You and your supervisor,
Yeah.
superior officer, and now you're meeting with the president?
Yes.
Can you describe this?
Well, we met with him in, the second story of the old OSS warehouse building. And Eisenhower and Nixon were there, and also Hoover was there. So he asked us what was going on, and we told him about the alien, the whole situation, and the black projects and so on. And he was just totally shocked. He appeared for the first time to be worried. You know, like he was worried.
I would think that Eisenhower would, I mean, he certainly knew that flying saucers were real.
Yes.
He knew that there were aliens. So I guess I'm just wondering, what would he have been, really surprised about?
Surprised about the black programs. Eisenhower said, got to keep this thing completely secret. You know, can't talk about this.
Your actual name is, the name you grew up with, that was a different name than what you had in the...
I never used it in the CIA at all.
Now, what about today? You're going on the public record, and this is still sensitive information, even though earlier you talked about, security oaths that maybe expire after a certain period of time.
50 years.
But you're still concerned.
Linda Moldenhau's phone call, her phone was tapped, and they got my phone number, and through the telephone company, they were able to find me, and so on.
When they found you, what happened?
I was going to a grocery store. Two guys in black suits come out of a black Lincoln town car and came over to see me. And they told me that I better not publish anything or talk to Linda about any more things. So at that time, I did, I stopped.
That was enough to intimidate you.
Yes. Rather remain anonymous. Never show my face on anything.
Really, thank you for doing this.
Yes, this was, I guess, kind of a good idea because I feel much better having talked about it. I kind of feel like there's a load off my shoulders.
Really?
Because I had an awful lot of secrets that I had kept over the years.
Why don't you describe them again?
The briefings that we received were incomplete, and they were deliberately incomplete because they wanted us to, again, lose people. Part of their tactics was to have a large percentage of the population lost. And so the briefings that we received were filled with gaps, holes. They didn't have information on what or whom or the technology levels of what we would be facing, other than that we were going to have an invasion force. So we were out doing a patrol just like we had done any number of days before, probing the area to see if we ended up having a reaction and came in contact. Me and 8 others from my unit were embedded in a native. We called them the Indigs, is what we referred to them as, indigenous. Then we were embedded in a platoon-sized unit of about 40 people, and we were doing a platoon movement. I was on the outskirts of a larger city. And you have to understand, these cities that we were operating in did not have any large skyscrapers. The way that this civilization operated was that when they needed more space, they spread out. And the way that their civilization was based was, it was, initially was based on trade and did not have a financial system. They did not have any fiat currency. That was later introduced.
By you guys, right?
By the commanding staff, and as part of one of the requirements for,
Wow.
Yes, that was part of the control. And so they had a really stable civilization before we showed up to help them with this invasion. First contact, we were out on a patrol. My unit was embedded in this platoon-sized element, and we were on the outskirts of a larger city. And the first indication something was going wrong was the enemy had opened, I believe, prematurely, because we were crossing a large avenue of one of their roads, and about a third of the platoon was exposed on the road when they opened up. And if they'd waited until we were all in the open, they would have had much better results, but thankfully they didn't. Next to the road was this 18-inch deep little ditch. It felt like a scratched out piece of the earth. Didn't feel like it was 18 inches deep. So most of us were able to take cover there. Behind us was a building about 30 by 15 by 3 stories. It was a smaller commercial building, stone block. And so to our front were off in the distance more like huts, residential huts. and those were too far to make it to, and not really providing much in the way of cover even if we wanted to. So the SOP was to fall back to a structure that would have provided us with cover, and this being the first contact, we wanted to fall back into that commercial building. And so we moved into it and returned fire, covering the bounding groups that worked their way back into the building.
Were they firing from a ship?
They were firing from the other side of the road in a forested area. And so at first we couldn't see them. And it was just mostly shadows. And, you know, they couldn't tell who and what.
But you must have had intel telling you what they looked like previously, right?
No. This is part of the
This was
gap.
the very first encounter.
The very first encounter.
Wow.
And my suspicion is that they had very detailed information on what they looked like, but we didn't get it. They kept it from us, again, in order to keep the casualty numbers up.
So then they were firing from the woods. And what kind of weapons were they firing?
Found out later that they were a cryogenic type weapon. And
Cryogenic?
Cryogenic.
So freezing cold? What?
It used a cryogenic substance, and given the level of our current technology that we have here, I don't want to get into how they work, because some of it could be duplicated, and that's not the purpose of what I'm coming forward. And the last thing I want to do is provide another weapon for people to hurt other people with.
Fair enough.
But they were cryogenically operated. They were a bladed projectile type, so that it had built into it a large blade. And aside from that, these beings had large claws on their feet as well as their hands. They were bipedal. They were about 8 to 9 feet tall. They were a cross between a machine and biological material. You could see tubes or hoses or mechanical type joints. And in between their armor, they had black skin. They had tufts of gray or dark gray or black fur. They had a shortened snout full of teeth.